Imagine waking up to the news that the world as you know it has fundamentally changed. The fragile balance of power that has held the globe together for decades has snapped, and the epicenter of this seismic shift is the Middle East. We are looking at a scenario that military strategists have dreaded, war-gamed, and prayed would never happen. A full-scale, multi-front, catastrophic collision involving Israel, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the United States of America. For years, the tension has been a slow boiling pot, but what we are witnessing right now is the pot boiling over, catching fire, and burning down the kitchen. The escalation between Israel and Iran has bypassed the shadow war phase. There are no more proxy skirmishes, no more plausible deniability, no more secret sabotage operations. This is direct, visceral, and terrifyingly real. We are talking about a cascade of events that has pulled the United States military into a direct kinetic conflict with a major regional power. To understand the gravity of what is happening right now, you have to look at the sheer scale of the battlefield. We are not just looking at isolated airstrikes, we are looking at a coordinated, desperate, and unprecedented level of violence that threatens to drag the entire globe into a crisis not seen since the Second World War. Israel is on high alert, facing threats from multiple directions, while the United States has deployed the most terrifying armada of naval power the modern world has ever seen directly to the region. And in the middle of this powder keg, the Iranian regime, facing absolute existential dread, has done the unthinkable. They have crossed a red line that no nation, not even the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War, dared to cross. Stay with me because for the next 40 minutes, we are going to dissect a moment in history that will be studied in military academies for the next century. We are going to uncover the truth behind the smoke, the mirrors, and the absolute chaos of the Israel-Iran-US war. And we begin with a single claim that made the entire planet hold its breath. There is a moment in every major world-altering war when one side says something so audacious, so operationally significant, that the entire world stops, freezes, and asks a single, terrifying question. Is it true? That exact moment happened on Sunday, March 1st, 2026. The world was already on edge. The Middle East was already engulfed in the flames of Operation Epic Fury. But then Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued what they officially designated as their 7th communique of Operation True Promise 4. The statement was broadcasted, shared, and translated into dozens of languages within minutes. And inside that highly official, heavily propagated statement was a single claim that, if true, would represent the absolute most consequential and devastating naval event since the Second World War. The IRGC claimed that they had launched 4 ballistic missiles and successfully struck the USS Abraham Lincoln. They claimed they had hit a 100,000-ton nuclear-powered supercarrier, a floating American city, a warship carrying thousands of American sailors and the most advanced, lethal naval combat system the United States has ever put to sea. The claim spread across the globe with the speed of a digital wildfire. Panic hit the financial markets. World leaders scrambled for secure phone lines. And then came the footage. Videos began circulating online, showing a massive aircraft carrier engulfed in thick, black smoke. Flames licking the flight deck, chaos in the waters. Millions of people from Tehran to Washington, from Beijing to London, watched a warship burn on their screens. The psychological impact was immediate. Had America's ultimate symbol of military supremacy just been destroyed? But the truth in modern warfare is rarely what it seems on a smartphone screen. Within hours, digital forensic experts and open-source intelligence analysts noticed something off about the footage. The burning carrier, the smoke, the catastrophic damage, it was all fabricated. The footage that had panicked millions was actually generated by the military simulation video game Arma 3. Millions of people had watched a warship burn that had, in reality, never caught fire. And then, the Pentagon responded. The response was cold, calculated, and deeply revealing. The Department of Defense simply stated that the USS Abraham Lincoln was not hit. Furthermore, they added a crucial detail. The missiles launched didn't even come close. United States Central Command posted this update on the platform X, simultaneously noting that the Lincoln's aircraft, the incredibly advanced fighter jets it carries, were already back in the air, flying combat missions over Iran. So here the world stood, caught between two governments, two completely contradictory statements, and one of the most expensive warships ever built, sitting in the dark waters of the Arabian Sea. Its actual status became the subject of the most consequential information warfare battle of the 21st century. But what actually happened on that Sunday? And more importantly, what does this event reveal about this expanding war involving Israel, Iran, and the United States? What does it tell us about Iran's actual real-world military capabilities? The reality of the battlefield that nobody in the mainstream media is properly covering is far more important and frankly far more dangerous than either the Iranian or the American government statements alone. To understand the magnitude of Iran even attempting this, you have to understand what they were shooting at, The USS Abraham Lincoln is not just a ship. Calling it a ship is a severe understatement. It is a sovereign, floating American military base. It is a Nimitz-class, nuclear-powered Leviathan. It operates with a full lethal carrier air wing. We are talking about fifth-generation F-35C Lightning stealth fighters, FA-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets that can blind enemy radar, and E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft that can see threats coming from hundreds of miles away. But the carrier does not travel alone. It never travels alone. It is surrounded by a ring of steel known as a carrier strike group. This includes Arleigh Burke-class destroyers armed to the teeth and running the Aegis combat system. The Aegis system is arguably the most sophisticated anti-missile defense network ever deployed anywhere on Earth, designed to track and destroy incoming threats in the blink of an eye. And right now, in this theater of war, the Lincoln is not alone. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the absolute pinnacle of America's newest carrier class, and the most expensive warship ever built at over $13 billion, is also operating in the same theater. 2 nuclear carriers, 2 complete massive strike groups. This represents an overwhelming projection of American power, supporting more than 30,000 U.S. service members spread across Bahrain, Egypt, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. If Iran had actually hit the Abraham Lincoln, it would have been the first successful strike on an American aircraft carrier since World War II. Think about that. Not during the Korean War, not in the jungles of Vietnam, not during the Gulf War, never. In 80 years of modern carrier operations, no adversary has ever managed to strike an American supercarrier, which is exactly why the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps felt the absolute necessity to tell the world that they did. This brings us to the core of what you need to understand about this conflict. There are 2 wars running simultaneously right now. There is the kinetic war, the physical reality of missiles, bombs, ships, destroyed buildings, and dying soldiers. And then there is the information war, the battle for the narrative, claims, denials, fake footage, psychological operations, and strategic messaging. In modern geopolitics, both matter almost equally. And on that fateful Sunday, Iran unequivocally lost the kinetic exchange. Their missiles failed to achieve their objective. So, having lost the physical battle, they immediately pivoted and tried to win the information one. The logic behind this Iranian strategy is not complicated if you look at it from their desperate perspective. Consider the reality on the ground for the regime. Iran's supreme leader was just killed in his own heavily fortified compound. 40 senior military commanders were wiped out in a single day. Iranian military infrastructure, radar arrays, missile silos, and command centers have been systematically struck and degraded across 31 different provinces. The Iranian public, a population already deeply fractured and largely resentful of the regime, is watching the absolute largest military humiliation in the entire history of the Islamic Republic unfold in real time. The aura of invincibility that the IRGC has tried to project for decades has been shattered. So, what does a government in that incredibly precarious existential position need above absolutely everything else? They need a win. They need any win, even a completely fabricated one. So the IRGC fired their ballistic missiles in the general direction of an American aircraft carrier. The missiles did not hit the ship. The Pentagon states they possibly did not even come close. But the physical outcome didn't matter to Tehran's propaganda machine. The claim mattered. 4 ballistic missiles, direct strike. The great American ship is burning. That specific claim, amplified by video game footage, reached millions of Iranians and regional proxies long before the Pentagon's official denial reached anyone. It served its purpose perfectly. It told a domestic and proxy audience that desperately needed to hear it a specific story. It told them, we are still fighting. We are hitting the Americans back. The sea is becoming their graveyard too. You have to understand, this is not a sound military strategy. This is survival communication from a government operating under immense, crushing existential pressure. But we must also analyze the Pentagon's denial because the American response was equally calculated and heavily weaponized. The phrase, didn't even come close, is not just casual military speak. Notice what the Pentagon did not say. They did not say, the missiles were intercepted by our Aegis destroyers. They did not say, we successfully defended the carrier group against a complex attack. They simply said, didn't even come close. That specific phrasing is a weapon of narrative warfare. It is a specific targeted humiliation. It is a deliberate public downgrade of Iran's technological and targeting capabilities in front of the entire watching world. The Pentagon's framing is masterfully designed to accomplish 2 vital geopolitical goals simultaneously. First, it reassures global allies, the State of Israel, and the fragile global financial markets that the $13 billion warship is completely unharmed, fully operational, and that American security guarantees are ironclad. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it sends a chilling signal to every other major adversary on the planet. China is watching this. Russia is watching this. North Korea is watching this. By dismissing the Iranian attack as wildly inaccurate, the United States is signaling to Beijing and Moscow that American carrier strike groups remain untouchable, completely beyond the reach of second-tier military powers. Both of those American goals are legitimate, and both are brilliantly served by the specific, dismissive language chosen by Central Command. However, here is the terrifying reality that both the Iranian boast and the American dismissal are obscuring. Here's the truth that military planners are losing sleep over. The sheer fact that the nation of Iran fired ballistic missiles at a United States carrier strike group at all, regardless of the accuracy, regardless of the physical outcome, is a massive historic escalation that has absolutely no modern precedent. No state actor in the entire post-Cold War era has dared to do this. The physical act of pressing the launch button, independent of where the missile actually landed, is a data point that American naval planners at the Pentagon are studying with intense, obsessive focus right now. They are not studying this because they don't know whether the Lincoln was hit. They know perfectly well the ship is safe. They are studying what exact type of missile Iran fired. They are studying where it was fired from. They are analyzing the telemetry to understand what kind of guidance system was used, and most importantly, what this attempt tells them about what Iran could potentially fire next. This brings us to the ultimate multi-billion-dollar question. Can Iran actually sink an American aircraft carrier? This is the real question, and the honest, unbiased answer is far more complicated and far more terrifying than either Sunday statement is willing to admit. An American carrier strike group is not a sitting duck. It is a massively complex, multi-layered defensive system. You have the Aegis destroyers forming a shield. You have the carrier's own highly classified electronic warfare suite, capable of scrambling enemy targeting radars. You have the close-in weapon systems, the Phalanx radar-guided Gatling guns that can shred incoming missiles at the last second, and you have the aircraft flying combat air patrol ready to shoot down threats from the sky. The carrier group is not just one target. It is a heavily armed, highly aggressive fortress in constant motion. Iran's arsenal of ballistic missiles, while proven to be accurate enough against large, fixed, stationary targets like military bases on land, faces a fundamentally different physics problem against a moving ship in the open ocean. An aircraft carrier changes its course and its speed continuously. Therefore, the targeting solution that was valid at the exact moment the missile was launched from Iranian soil may be significantly, wildly wrong by the time the missile actually arrives in the target area minutes later. That massive gap between hitting a fixed target and solving the mathematics of a moving target is exactly where Iran's current operational capability ends and where its deadly ambition begins. But do not underestimate the adversary. Iran knows this limitation, and they have spent years and billions of dollars developing anti-ship ballistic missiles specifically designed for this exact mission. Weapons like the Khalij Fars and the Hormuz series missiles are built with terminal guidance systems. This means they are designed with optical or radar seekers in their nose cones, allowing them to independently search for, track, and adjust their trajectory toward moving ships in the final fiery phase of their flight. Whether these specific advanced weapons were actually used on that Sunday, and how accurate they actually are against a fully active, fully hostile Aegis defense network, those questions remain genuinely open and highly classified. But here's the strategic point that matters far more than the technical specifications of the missiles. Iran's military doctrine, their grand strategy against the United States, does not actually require them to physically sink an aircraft carrier to achieve a victory. Their strategy requires something entirely different. It requires making the carrier cautious. It requires making the American admirals second-guess their positioning. It requires making the political leadership in Washington, D.C. sweat and ask themselves a very difficult question. Is the risk of losing 5,000 American sailors and a $13 billion flagship in a single catastrophic explosion worth the operational position that ship currently holds in contested, dangerous waters? On that specific measure, not whether the missiles physically hit the deck, but whether Iran has successfully made carrier operations in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea more politically and strategically complicated, Sunday may have had a far greater effect than the Pentagon's confident, dismissive denial is willing to acknowledge. And that leads us to the question that absolutely nobody in the mainstream discourse is asking. There is a specific number that should be printed in every major headline across the world, but it is completely absent from the conversation. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the other massive supercarrier operating in this war zone, has now been deployed for 8 continuous months. According to deep dives into naval records, if the Ford remains in this combat theater through mid-April, It will break a post-Vietnam War deployment record. The Chief of Naval Operations stated clearly in January that he would push back aggressively on further deployment extensions because of the severe human cost. He stated that sailors and their families want to have some certainty that they are going to do a standard 7-month deployment, yet here they are. 8 months confined to a steel ship in an active combat zone, operating against an adversary that has publicly, loudly announced its intention to sink them, and has now literally fired ballistic missiles in their direction. Furthermore, they are operating near the Strait of Hormuz, a critical maritime choke point that is under constant threat of closure. The brutal irony is that the same strait that the Iranians are threatening to close is the exact same strait that the American carriers' own logistical supply lines depend on. Food, fuel, ammunition, all of it must flow through contested waters. Former President Trump recently stated that Operation Epic Fury, the ongoing military campaign, could last another 4 weeks. Think about what that actually means on the ground and on the water. That is 4 more weeks of 2 massive carrier strike groups operating squarely within the lethal range of Iranian anti-ship missile systems. They are sailing in dark waters where naval mines have almost certainly been laid. They are operating in an environment where Iranian diesel-electric submarines, quiet and deadly, are lurking beneath the surface. And they are fighting in a war where 3 Americans are already confirmed dead. That cold, hard human and financial calculus, the sheer exhaustion of the crews and the massive risk to American lives is the real story. That calculus, not the weekend headline about a missed missile shot, is what will ultimately determine exactly where this escalating conflict goes next. So let us be absolutely crystal clear about what Sunday, March 1st, 2026, actually revealed to the world. Strip away the propaganda, strip away the fake video game footage, and look at the raw operational reality. Iran revealed to the globe that it is fundamentally willing to fire ballistic missiles directly at American aircraft carriers, even knowing full well that the probability of a successful hit is incredibly low. That willingness to pull the trigger is entirely new. The recent death of the Iranian supreme leader has effectively removed the final lingering restraint on military escalation. The regime feels it has absolutely nothing left to lose. Iran has confidently crossed a psychological and military threshold that previous Iranian governments, even in their most aggressive, most confrontational moments in history, absolutely never crossed. On the other side of the equation, the United States revealed that its carrier strike groups remain fully operational, deadly, and effective, even while operating under the most intense, concentrated Iranian missile barrage in history. The USS Lincoln is still launching jets. The USS Ford is still flying sorties. The devastating American air campaign against Iranian targets continues unabated. That is the real American power on display. But in this chaotic exchange, the United States also revealed something deeply uncomfortable, something it absolutely did not intend to highlight. 3 American service members are confirmed dead. 5 more are seriously wounded. American blood has been spilled in a war that was launched without formal congressional authorization against a sovereign country that, incredibly, was engaged in active diplomatic negotiations with American envoys just 1 week prior. Those American deaths are not just statistics. They are tragedies that carry massive, volatile political consequences back in Washington, D.C. Those consequences represent a domestic political storm that no aircraft carrier, no matter how powerful, and no social media post, no matter how confident, can ever fully contain or suppress. For 80 years, the aircraft carrier has served as the ultimate undeniable signal of American global hegemony. American presidents, regardless of their political party, have responded to almost every major international crisis with the exact same instinctual command: send the carriers. The carrier is how America projects its voice across the oceans. It is how Washington says to the rest of the world, we are here, we are fully committed, and we possess the overwhelming firepower to fight and win. When a nation like Iran chooses to fire missiles at that specific symbol, even if those missiles miss their target, they are directly answering that American signal. By launching those weapons, Iran is broadcasting its own message. They are saying, your ultimate symbol of imperial power is not beyond our reach. Your military presence in our backyard is no longer free of cost. And you must understand, that specific message lands loudly and clearly in capital cities far beyond Tehran. The entire world is watching this interaction. The leadership in Taiwan watches the American carriers, and they calculate their own survival against China. The government in South Korea watches, calculating the American commitment against the North. The wealthy Gulf states, nations whose vital ports and international airports are literally burning right now because they host American military forces, are watching in sheer terror. They are watching and intensely calculating whether the American security guarantee, the very guarantee upon which they built their entire national defense and foreign policy, is actually functioning the way Washington promised them it would. Therefore, the most critical question of this entire geopolitical crisis is not whether Iran successfully sank an American carrier on Sunday. We know they didn't. The real paradigm-shifting question is whether the entire global framework of American military primacy, the long-held assumption that U.S. carriers can operate absolutely anywhere in the world with relative impunity, has been permanently, irrevocably altered. Has that era ended because a second-tier military power, a sanctioned and isolated regime, has consciously chosen to target those majestic carriers directly for the very first time in the post-Cold War era? That massive historical question will absolutely not be answered by a defiant post on the platform X. It will not be answered by press briefings at the Pentagon. It will be answered in the cold, hard operational decisions that will be made over the next 4 grueling weeks. It will be answered by the decisions regarding exactly where those multi-billion-dollar carriers are ordered to sail, at what speed they are ordered to travel, and ultimately at what potential cost in human lives and national prestige. So let us look at exactly where things stand as the dust settles on Monday, March 2nd, 2026. The USS Abraham Lincoln is currently positioned in the turbulent waters of the northern Arabian Sea, actively launching fully armed fighter aircraft deep into Iranian airspace. It was absolutely not hit on Sunday. The American military operation, the kinetic destruction of Iranian assets, continues without a single pause. Iran loudly claimed a historic military strike that it completely failed to achieve. Yet that fabricated claim successfully reached millions of desperate people before any official American denial could correct the record. In the dark art of information warfare, it served the exact psychological purpose it was designed to serve. The human toll is mounting. 3 Americans are dead. An Iranian frigate rests at the bottom of the sea, completely sunk. Hezbollah, the heavily armed proxy force in Lebanon, has escalated the regional chaos by firing its first barrage of rockets deep into Israel since November of 2024, opening up yet another terrifying front in this expanding war. The wealthy Gulf states are locked in emergency, panicked sessions, terrified of the violence spilling over their borders. European capitals from London to Paris to Berlin are desperately calling for immediate ceasefires, yet they possess absolutely no diplomatic or military mechanism to actually enforce one. The global information war screamed that the American carrier was sinking to the bottom of the ocean, but the physical reality remained that the carrier kept flying its jets, projecting unimpeded American wrath. But here's the final, most chilling reality to hold on to as this dark week begins, and as the world holds its breath. The ballistic missiles that missed their target on Sunday are absolutely not the last missiles that the nation of Iran possesses. Their arsenals, buried deep beneath mountains, remain vast. And the American aircraft carrier that successfully survived Sunday's barrage is completely not guaranteed to be in the exact same geographic position, operating at the exact same relentless operational tempo, or sailing in the exact same favorable political environment 4 weeks from right now. Former President Trump confidently stated this operation would take 4 weeks. But if the history of warfare in the Middle East has taught us anything, it is that this conflict has already violently demonstrated that it absolutely does not follow the neat, predictable timelines that politicians or military planners projected when the very first bomb fell. The war has a terrifying momentum of its own now. The American supercarrier kept flying its jets on Sunday. It projects power today. But in a war where red lines are being erased every single hour and where a desperate regime is fighting for its very survival, the only certainty is uncertainty. The carrier kept flying, for now.